So.
Festival?
Yeah, it is recording right now.
Okay, perfect.
I'm
And
also gonna add a Carmen Conca, Veronica, Adamus, Julius.
Julius is from Global Shapers, yeah.
Where are you in the world right now, Veronica?
I'm in Hong Kong.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Hong Kong, but I normally live in London. With COVID and all that, I've chosen Hong Kong. It's just a little bit safer here.
How long have you been there?
I've been here for a couple months.
Okay. Can you work remotely completely, or do you have, like, is it really annoying for you to be there?
Time difference is tough. I think with New York, we're 13 hours difference. But with LA, it's even more, so it's a little bit tough. I've got kids as well, so yeah.
Where are they? Are they in Hong Kong with you?
Yes.
That's okay. How old are they?
They're 5. I've got twin boys. They're 5 years old.
Oh, okay. That's a nice age.
and just the homeschooling part is a little bit difficult. Yeah.
No, okay. That's fine. Everyone, we're just waiting for about 10 more people. So yeah, feel free to just, get a cup of tea or finish your lunch, as long as you deactivate your microphone so we don't hear you, chew during the talk. That's fine. You want to eat crisps or popcorn. Important is that you enjoy this and that we all learn something. So yeah, normally we can have at least 20 people coming. Sorry?
Eleanor and Jarvin, where are you guys dialing in from?
We're both in Cambridge right now. But it's amazing, always, like, people from all over join the call. It's always interesting to find out.
Yeah, it's how cold is it right now in Cambridge? I remember last year.
I'm wearing a scarf in my flat. That gives you an idea. No, it was okay 2 weeks ago. It was about 15 degrees, and then this week it's really cold. I think it's, I don't know, 4 or 5 degrees feeling. It's probably a bit higher up, but like with wind and humidity, it feels really, bone cold. Don't know, Jarvin, for you if you go out a bit, but yeah, it's not going to work.
Yeah. With one of my Scandinavian friends, and he said, if you're too cold, you're just not wearing enough clothes.
I mean, yes and no. Like, it depends on the humidity, I think. So,
right.
There's so much you can do. Okay, let's wait another 2 minutes. There was a reminder sent to everyone normally an hour ago, so everyone should be able to join. And worst case, we'll get on. So what we'll do is I will introduce you shortly, and then I just say in a few words what the project is. And then Daniel will be kind of leading the interview or the talk, the bands. Veronica, do you want to share some slides? Is there anything that you want to share your screen with, or is it all good like this? Huh?
I didn't prepare anything.
Okay, that's
It's all good. As discussed yesterday, we're just gonna have a casual conversation, because I think that's also where the most interesting stories happen. That's where it's most authentic.
Definitely.
So I'm really looking forward to that already.
Dan, the only thing, I don't know the others. Dan, I don't hear you very, very loudly compared to the others. Jarvin, do you have the same problem?
Ever so slightly.
Okay.
Let me dial in from my phone as well. Then you have 2 audio streams.
So we have Livia in the waiting room. Do you want me to let her in?
Sure.
There you go.
I already did. And by the way, your co-host, Eleanor, so you can also mute people in case I was just on a Zoom conference and someone was taking a phone call and the host wasn't, in the room.
Oh, yeah.
So we basically had to listen for a phone call for 3 minutes until the person realized and was like, then quickly unmuting.
So you're giving me a lot of power, I see. I'm not sure if it's good.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility.
Some people are trying to talk, but they're on mute, like everyone is.
I think we should start in probably a minute, so that we don't delay people too much, and the others can just tune in whenever they can. I mean, not everybody has a long lunch break, so I totally understand if people tune in a bit later. Is that okay for you, Veronica?
Sure.
Okay. See, we've got somebody else. It's great. I think people are trickling in slowly.
How's the sound right now? Is it better?
It's a bit better, yeah.
Okay.
Should I?
Yeah, I'm sorry for that. Yesterday worked perfectly.
I have my headphones, maybe that's why.
Yeah. So let us start. I think more people will join, but we'll just naturally add them to the call. Veronica, thank you so much for being here. As you've seen, Veronica built some impressive things. Latest, she's built a new brand, and she's going to tell you all about that very soon. So I'll refrain from doing a very lengthy intro, because Veronica, you'll have the chance to talk about everything you've lived through and experienced later on anyway. I'm a global shaper myself in Cambridge. I just moved, so I'm not part of the hub anymore. Now moved to Frankfurt. It's a pleasure having this conversation with you today, Veronica. But before we do that, Eleanor, do you quickly want to tell everyone what EcoFashion is all about, what the community stands for in terms of global shapers as well?
So welcome everyone, thanks Stan. So yes, we're Global Shapers, and we were basically a community that was funded by the World Economic Forum, and we are hubs all over the world. I think it's about almost 200 hubs everywhere, and we're trying to have an impact locally and then globally by working together between hubs. So things that are important to us can be poverty, inequality, sustainability, climate change. And every time we see something that is problematic or that can be improved, then we try to. And the project that we have is called EcoFashion, for ecological fashion, and it's for sustainable fashion. And what I realized at the beginning of the year was simply that fashion is actually a very, very big source of CO2 emissions and child labor, and also lots of, environmentally, it's not the most optimal industry, and there's actually a lot that we can improve. One of the reasons is because all of us actually need to get dressed in the morning. All of us buy clothes regularly because they get damaged. And the last 20-30 years, the phenomenon of fast fashion, or fashion clothes that you change clothes 2-3 times a year, you buy something all the time and it's so cheap, is actually having a massive impact on climate change and just usually like environmental damage. So we're doing the EcoFashion project, which is firstly a series of webinars. We're trying to have guests such as Veronica here that are either working in sustainable fashion or are consultant for sustainable fashion or work in fashion and do want to make a difference in sustainability. And I can give everyone an insight about actually how bad is this impact on the world and what you can do as customers. This is the first part. The second part is we actually try to map Cambridge shops, and we're trying to tell you, well, this one is actually quite sustainable or not. This shop is good if you want to, buy some clothes. It's better than this one where you wanted to originally go. So we're creating a website, and thanks to Dan, it's live now. So we're very excited about this. And we're trying to bring even more changes that you will see during the year when the project develops even more and have an impact. So this is to summarize us. I will send the link of our website in the chat later on, and you can have a look. You can contact us anytime, and have fun. Enjoy the meeting, and Veronica and Dan. So I'll let you start.
Eleanor, before we jump into things, do you quickly want to say who you are and what you spend your time with?
Sorry. So yes, of course. So I'm Global Shapers from Cambridge. I joined last year in December, actually. So almost a year now. PhD student in material science at the University of Cambridge, and I love space and sports and music and a lot of things. So fashion is actually quite far from what I usually care for, but it feels good to be making a big difference, So I chose that project for that reason. Up to you now.
Well, let's see after today's conversation what you think the link between what you study and fashion will be. I think there might be something interesting there.
Yeah, that could indeed. There's actually a lot that we can do in material science. Lots of material scientists actually do go into fashion later on because of all just the processes and things like wettability of materials. And actually, I think somebody who just joined is actually did material science studies with me and is actually doing sustainable materials now. And it's very exciting, you know, like because he's working on sustainable sports fabrics, and it's useful for all of us. So yeah, can be a good theme to discuss later in the Q&A. So everyone, feel free to put questions in the Q&A or in the chat for later on. I will be moderating them, and yeah, write them anytime you want, but we'll answer them later.
Yeah, as Eleanor said, questions in the chat window. Also, if you can, please activate your videos. It's great to see some familiar faces. Matthias, great to see you there. Just, you know, turn your videos on because it makes everything a little bit more casual. It's great to see your guys' faces. Also for Veronica, when she, you know, talks about herself and so on, to see who you actually are. So if you can enable your camera, please do that. Also, so to begin with, I met Veronica in Portugal at an adventure actually, and initially she, you know, started telling a couple of stories. I was already really impressed, and in Veronica I found something that I rarely see. It's a unique mixture of, at the one hand, humility, at the same time in-spiration. So since that time in Portugal, Veronica, I've been really inspired by you. It's so great that you're joining today. And today is really about your story, because it is really inspiring, and about, you know, your opinions about the future and about sustainability. So why don't we start with the former, your story? Do you quickly tell us who you are from the beginning to the end?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Veronica. So I'm Chinese, but I grew up in Hong Kong and going to my family's factories. So my father and my grandfather started with knitwear manufacturing and also denim factories. And as a teenager, I went to these factories and already asked, why is this so smelly? What is this dust? Where is this colored water going? And of course, back then it was just the way things were. And they kind of ushered me away. And I started interning in the factories. I started working on my dad's brands as a sales girl. Has always been in fashion. And my first business after university was bringing mass market American brands to China. I launched 12 brands in the China market, and we opened over 1,000 stores in China, mainly not so much Beijing or Shanghai, but the second and the third and the fourth tier cities in China. But the most important part there, excuse me, is that period of time, 2008 until 2015, was a lot of pollution. I walk off a plane and I'll be like, what am I walking into? It's a sandstorm. I see particles in the air. End of a long day's work, I go back and wash my face and it'll be black. I'm like, what is this? And I got really curious about pollution and air and environment. Sorry. And then the other thing was just the vast size of China and the amount of cities and people that's around in terms of consumption. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're making so much products, and where does that all go? And separate to that, on my more personal side, I was slightly struggling with body image and eating and all that, and I got into all sorts of weird diets, and was not the most healthy thing. But from there, I got into what's food, what's healthy food, what's organic food. And from there, then it became sustainability. And because it's so, the health and wellness world is so linked to the nature and planet, into sustainability, and eventually what's sustainable fashion. In 2015, I sold my China business. I got pregnant as well. And then I also went on, right before that, I went on a trek in Nepal, and just being out in nature, I went on this hike. I had a moment where I literally was an epiphany moment. I said, whatever I do next has to have a purpose. And for me, that purpose is sustainability. It's not just about making more money. My father's dream, and he's super successful, was to ring the New York Stock Exchange bell, and he did it twice. And that was his, you know, every night before visualization, every night before going to bed, that was what he dreamed of. And for me, it was more about making the more dollars, but really sustainability. So I went to learn about it as much as possible, researching online, talking to people, and getting introduced to all sorts of wonderful people who are already in the field, and also my brothers who are in tech investments. And I went to them, I'm like, what should I do? Is it clean tech? Is it renewable energy? Honestly, we still don't know much about that. And they kind of pointed me down the path of material science. And one of the companies that our family subsequently invested in is Modern Metal. They grow leather in a lab, and you don't have to kill a cow in order to have leather. And also that leather in the future would be able to be applied in different ways, like sprayed on or something like that. So that really opened my eyes. And from there, I looked into a lot of other interesting material sciences, and I was like, whoa, some of this is like magic. And my biggest question was, why is not more people using it? Why are not more of the big brands, the multi-billion-dollar brands, fashion brands that are out there using it? And I try to go down that path of convincing other people. But a couple years ago, no one cared about sustainability. I talked to people, they would turn around and run away. The world has changed very much, and it's a very great thing to see. So basically half of my time I do investments in material science, and my family does more tech and consumer, and I'm like, guys, it's not sustainable enough. Let's go back to sustainability. And that's my role. And then my other half of my time, I launched a eco-friendly, eco-innovative, size-inclusive brand. And so size-inclusive meaning US size 00 until US size 24. And in the brand, we have, one of our best-selling products is our trousers made from fermented sugar. And the trousers are adjustable at the waist and at the length. So if you're like me, fluctuate month to month on your size, or after a big meal, you can let it out a little bit. Or if you want to wear heels or flats, you can also just easily adjust the pants, reducing the amount of trousers that you need to buy. And we also have, for example, our recycled plastic bottle puffer jacket made from 330 recycled plastic bottles. It's tied with a proper ocean cleanup project. And you can also unzip it so that you can wear it as a short jacket, or you can wear it as a long coat. So the idea is using high tech on the material science side, but also low tech in the design side to increase the ways you can wear the clothes and increase the length, the time frame for the clothes. And I think Eleanor touched on one point is, fast fashion has created a world where we buy something, wear it once, and it usually happens with the developed countries, with people who have money. They're like, oh, this is so cheap, let me buy it and throw it away. And I think it's something that as an industry, we really have to look at and look at what to do. So our family has also invested in some rental businesses, including Rent the Runway. We've invested in Real, and also, which is a resale business. And personally, I would, always encourage us to buy secondhand whenever possible before buying new clothes. And that's why my brand, we're not making party dresses. Like if you want a party dress, go rent something, go buy secondhand and resell it. And so we're focusing on daily essentials that can be kept in your closet for a very long time. Yeah. So that's me.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing, Veronica. So you've seen the fashion industry from a couple of different angles, right? From the corporate side, from the entrepreneurial side. How do you see the corporate commitment towards, generating more sustainable fashion?
Yeah, I think really 2 years ago, sustainability, there was virtually nothing. I mean, there was Stella McCartney. She really was one of the first, and then people did not do that much. But today, I would say the industry has changed a lot. We still have to be careful because there is some which are greenwashing. But one of the most exciting things that had happened in this past, I think exactly 1 year ago, is under Kering Group, which is Gucci brand, and Francois-Henri Pinault and President Macron of France, they got together, including as well as Paul Pullman, ex-CEO of Unilever. They got together and formed Fashion Pact. And Fashion Pact is now a collection of, I think, 6 brands that represent at least 50% of the industry, multi-billion-dollar brands, the biggest ones. And they've got together, they have webinars, they have using science-based targets to figure out how we can be more sustainable and kind of quantify the whole process, versus one brand saying, oh, I'm using less water, where, or one brand saying, I changed the solar panels, one brand saying, I'm using organic cotton versus not, like how do we really trace everything and have accountability? And I think the Fashion Pact is a great thing that a lot of brands signed on. What we've seen also within the Fashion Pact, because it's such a large range of brands, whether luxury or mass, athletic or casual, is also the knowledge of everyone is so different. There are brands and companies like H&M, for example, fast fashion, bad model, but they know a lot more about sustainability. Tommy Hilfiger, for example, knows and has done a lot more in sustainability versus Coach, who has done much less, for example. And I think it's getting the knowledge to be spread across. And one of the things I really believe in terms of sustainability is that we need to collaborate, not just within companies, but also within industries and even within amongst countries. And I think fashion has always been, this is my fabric, this is my design, this is my factory, you're my competitor, everyone's my competitor. And how do we change that mindset so that people share information? One of the things one example I like to say is like, if one brand, even if you were a $1 billion brand and you went to YKK, which is the largest zipper manufacturer, and said, oh, I want a sustainable option, they'd be like, we so much bigger, we supply to so many brands, you're the only one asking, that's not going to work. But if 4 brands, 5 brands or more, even small brands get together and kind of ask for that together, then we have the collective power. So that's really what we're seeing now in fashion. And I think that's really exciting. There's change all across.
Yeah, and for me, for instance, as a consumer, if I'm seeing a corporation advertising a lot about sustainability, is it possible for us to differentiate between greenwashing and who actually does something relevant?
Yeah, I think first step is go on their website and read the About Us page and read the products. And once you start getting into it, you be more smarter, because what happens is sometimes a product, brands would be like, this one part is recycled, like the lining is recycled, but the outer part is not recycled. Or if brands are talking about where their factories are, some brands have some of the big brands have environmental P&L. They talk about where the factories are, where they if they use solar energy, or how they treat wastewater. So it really depends. I think the more information you see on the website, the more you can trust them, versus they're just saying we are sustainable, and a lot of times it's not. With sustainability, though, no one is 100%, and I think everyone is trying to do as much as possible. There are still limitations. For my brand, we carefully chose where our raw materials are, where they make the fabric and where they make the final garment, to be as close as possible together. So we have factories in Portugal where the fabric and the factory for that is literally 15-minute drive away. So we don't need to ship the raw materials across. With some of the larger companies, that's not quite, I think that people are still working on that. But I also have a friend who asked me, Veronica, you're a sustainable brand, why are you using plastic? And every item that someone buys comes in what we call a poly bag. It's a clear plastic bag. Ours is recycled and recyclable. Of course, recyclable because it's soft plastic only at like supermarkets with plastic bags, not with your plastic water bottles. But the thing is, it's very difficult for us at this point to use something that doesn't have plastic. We put it in a mailer, and let's say suburban America, the mailman throws it on a porch and it pours now raining, our product is going to be ruined. I don't think a customer wants to get in their mailer a t-shirt that's crunched up into the corner of the bag either. So there are certain things where we're trying to use the best available option. Do I want to not use plastic at all? Definitely. And I think as a brand, we've set a rule. We only use recycled plastic that can be recycled again. We make sure our sticker on that plastic bag is also recyclable in the same method. You don't have to physically take it out. But I think in sustainability, that's the thing, like there's not something there's not 100% solution just yet. And so in my investment world, that's where the fun stuff come in, because I am definitely looking at a lot of plastic alternatives and seeing what new technologies that will be out there soon that can be commercialized for use.
Yeah. If a big brand wants to make an impact, what's the biggest lever you can pull? You know, is it the shipping? Is it the production, lack of new collection? So how can you pull the biggest lever?
I think in general, for not just fashion, but any business, would be to look for renewable energy sources, whether it's solar or wind power, and same for our homes as well. I think, you know, us living in cities, we should have the option of choosing. And I think that would be one of the lowest hanging fruit. I think in terms of technological advances in the future would be better data prediction, so that we don't have so much wasted products in the future. And then of course the material science side, which I'm personally so excited about. And I think there's lots of innovation that's happening there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. And before I see there's questions coming in from the audience already, and we won't forget about those. But before we jump into this, I want to touch upon the topic you've mentioned in the beginning, Veronica, purpose. So once you've had this realization, once you've had this epiphany, how did purpose empower you to launch your business? And did it play a big role? Because it's definitely no mean feat in, you know, the industry we're talking about, to launch a new completely sustainable brand. So what was the role of purpose in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I think a good example, let me start with the investment side. Actually, there are so many times where I see investment deals where my family are investing, or I'm like, oh my gosh, looks like it's going to be very lucrative, IPO next year, you know, something like that. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to make the investment because it's not sustainable. And it can be hard at those moments, because you're thinking, oh, financially it could be a great return, but I think with purpose it really helps my decision making. And now it's also sometimes when I get deals, I'm like, no, I'm not going to even spend time on it because it's not sustainable, so I skip through it right away. And then on the brand side, we've also had to make decisions with our product and how we make our products, whether, you know, and oftentimes it's down to cost. Everything I would say for sustainable options would be around 15 to 20% more expensive, whether our buttons or labels or hang tags, you know, our packaging and all that is still a bit more expensive. And I think people are so used to buying things for lower price. And so margins are always a discussion in fashion, no matter if you're luxury or not, or mass. And so those are the moments where it's like, oh, do we give up on it? Do we not? And, you know, I always stick with, no, we have to be as sustainable as possible. And even in my company, my team already knows this. When we make something or we're in the process of developing, I'll always ask, is that the most sustainable option? Is there something better? What about this? What about that? And like, they're like, yes, Veronica, you know, they're already asking this question as well. And I think it's important to embody that thought throughout every single aspect of the company. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the consistency. Many people don't have it, and I think they should. It's getting more important every year. Before we ruin our planet, we should be more consistent about those decisions. Now that we jump into, I would love to give everyone the opportunity to ask their own question, right? So Matthias, do you want to unmute yourself and ask straight away and give the context you believe is necessary for your question?
Okay. Well, I wasn't expecting to talk, but can you hear me well? Okay. So, Veronica, I met Daniel last year, 2 years ago in Cambridge when we were studying together. And I have a startup that wants to bring production transparency to each product. So nowadays, you mentioned it, sustainable products are more expensive. So customers look at a product and look at the price and then decide whether to buy it or not. And as Oscar Wilde once said, a cynic knows the price of everything but the value of nothing. So our startup wants to create a platform with QR codes where the customer can scan it and would immediately see the whole production storyline of that product, where it was made, how it was made, when it was made, The emphasis is more on social production and how to avoid disasters like the Rana Plaza collapse in 2013, rather than on materials, although one does not exclude the other. So we're trying to develop this as a business model. So far, we've had success with very small companies, but as soon as we find that we're approaching companies that are bigger or brands that are bigger, they seem to have too much to hide. They like the idea, but as soon as it gets real down to full transparency, or even more transparency than just greenwashing, it becomes a problem. And I would like to hear your thoughts about transparency, both on the production side and on the sustainable side. Do you think that's feasible to be transparent for a brand or not?
I think the industry knows that that's something they need to work towards. Most of the big brands have legacy contracts or legacy partnerships that they're a bit worried to touch because, again, it's a good price or whatnot. And in fashion, traditionally, what has happened is there's just agents like Li & Fung, for example. They're one of the biggest agents, and the American brand goes to Li & Fung, and they don't know who else is working down the chain. Luckily, Li & Fung is a rather good company. You kind of, can get some information these days, but there are other agents out there which you don't know if the factory is then outsourced to even more. And I think the brands are now making a commitment to go look into it and dig into it. So you're definitely on the right trend. And, some brands are a bit more advanced and some brands a little bit less. But it's people like you who are helping our industry move to a better step. But I do have a question for you, which is, how do you ensure the data and how do you even input the data? Does the brands come up with the what you see after you scan, or do you have a format, or is there
It's funny that you should ask that, because that's the real pain point. That's the real challenge, and at the same time opportunity. We are developing tools to capture the data. So we're working with very small companies right now, local brands with a very short production chain. So we can actually go into the workshops. You were talking about Portugal. We're working with some Portuguese companies as well. And we're providing them with a very simple tool to scan barcodes, the QR codes that we're using to register each step of the production. And that information is uploaded onto our platform and then later on used to feed that timeline. But you're absolutely right. That's the big challenge. That's also why I'm so skeptical about blockchain, because it assumes that you already have the data to upload to the blockchain. And secondly, it's immutable. If ever there is a mistake made or ever the information proves to be incorrect, there's no way you can rectify it afterwards because it's immutable. So right now we're deliberately staying clear of blockchain to solve that problem first, so that we can have true trustworthy data before uploading it. But you're absolutely right. That's the big challenge. And many brands don't have that data. Even if they wanted to do that, they ignore it. That's also how Rana Plaza occurred in the first place, because many brands didn't even know that their garments were being made there. They had no idea. So.
And on the most very, very sustainable brands, one of the famous brands, Allbirds, for example, now they've come up with an idea to put a carbon, kind of a carbon calculator to show how much carbon is in each product. So that's what you're saying is, the transparency of the supply chain, but then there's also how much carbon are we using to make this product? How much water are we using? And how are those measured and all that? So there are different pillars and different aspects to kind of measure. And I think people are asking for it and the industry is trying to figure out how to do it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, looking 20 years into the future, so not the immediate problems, but if you look 20 years ahead, Veronica, do you think solutions like Matthias is providing right now are going to be global, and will they be used by everyone in the fashion industry?
Yeah, I think definitely transparency and all that would be much more open in the future. I think there's one company that we looked at also. They can scan products like, how do you say it? It's almost like scanning the dust on the product or the DNA. It's almost like you get the DNA of the product and you know exactly where it's been or where it's come from. And it can be any clothing, it can be a box or whatnot. And you can scan that. So people are developing something like that. So I think 20 years down the road, we will have some very interesting transparency out there. Yeah. But if you allow me to talk about what I think about, 20 years down the road, besides on the transparency side, what it looks like fashion, I think I would believe that vintage, secondhand would still be a thing. But how I see it is also touching to what Eleanor started with. We have to get clothed every day. And when we have to get clothed, we need to figure out how we can make our clothes. Yes, we should use less, that's for sure, but we need to figure out how we can make it. So in most of sustainable fashion today, it's very clear we still have an environmental footprint. You still have a carbon footprint. Choosing organic versus non-organic, we're doing less bad. We're not actually doing good. But I do have hope because, for example, this shirt that I'm wearing is made from silk. It's made from regenerative, organic, agriculturally grown trees that then feed the silkworms, and then we make the silk. And where they grow the trees, where they harvest the silk and then make the fabric, and the factory is all in the same place. But the important part here is the regenerative agriculture, and which is something not just related to silk, but also to all our food that we eat. With industrial farming, what has happened is we grow, this part is all corn, this part is all wheat, and that soil after 20, 30 years, it's being depleted, becoming even desert-like. And people just, let me put more fertilizers. And that's how we've been growing food, especially in America, for the past 30, 40, 50 years. And the food 50 years ago in one carrot has a lot more nutrition than what a carrot that we eat these days. But that's the same for growing silk. When we do regenerative agriculture, we actually capture more carbon dioxide into the ground, and eventually we can sequester it and store it. But also it's also better for the farmers. And so our farmers that grow this silk, they don't only grow silk, now they do rotational cropping, and they even have some animals on the farm, including ducks and chickens, and they have eggs, and therefore they have multiple income streams. And this definitely is something that I see when we actively try to make this product, it's better for the planet and also for the people. And when I see things like that, I'm like, okay, is there regenerative farming cotton? And I realized that that's something that's not a lot out there right now, but we use so much cotton. Okay, I also to make the argument, we should move away from cotton and let's go use more linen, let's go use more hemp, which are some less damaging crops in the world. And then of course, then we go into the material science side. But the regenerative farming point, it also affects on all our food. One of the reasons why I choose to, without COVID times, live in London is because there are regenerative farms out in London, and we can get our meats as well, and vegetables and all that. Try to be plant-based as much as possible, but the meats that we do eat from regenerative farms. So it's something that everyone can make a difference to. Yeah, it gives me a lot of hope, this part.
Yeah, there's some amazing projects going on at the moment, and 20 years from now, I really hope that will be normality. We do have another question from Alexis. Alexis, do you want to go ahead, unmute yourself? And awesome.
Yeah, sure. Do you hear me? Okay, great. So hi, everyone. Thank you for organizing this webinar. It's very interesting. So my name is Alexis Jarvin. I just started a brand in doing sustainable and performance clothes for streetwear. And yeah, as I was building my supply chain and looking into transparency, I also run into these difficulties. But my question was more about recycling, because when I was asking suppliers about that, they all were telling me, oh, this is difficult to put into place. This is something that needs the collaboration of the whole industry, et cetera, et cetera. And I was wondering if you know any project that actually is working where brands might be gathered their used clothes and then turn them into new clothes, because we know that it's just like 73% is like sending you the landfill and this kind of thing. So
yeah. So this is a great subject to talk about. My cousin, actually, in Hong Kong, she created her own proprietary recycling factory. So she can take anything, basically without spandex, without denim, like without down jackets she can't take, but most materials she can. And you can mechanically break it down and respin it into knitwear yarn. So They have also helped with H&M, and the H&M's, they just launched a recycling thing, which is in their store. That one is very small. It's more for show. It's not really commercializable yet. But my cousin's factory, again, is also very small. And I think one of the things she's like, I'm just not going to work with fashion brands. I'm just going to work with hotels, because hotels have bed sheets and towels and all that. It's so much easier to collect. You know exactly what's in there. It's one material. It's so much easier to recycle. And I think that really is the problem for recycling these days. You collect the products. If you even can collect the products, it's hard to sort. But I can definitely send you a list of other companies that are doing recycling. You know, there's Evernew, there's Born Again, which are doing chemical recycling. And they're trying to bring it to the next level. There's one, I think it's called FiberSort in Europe, that has a robotic machinery that can sort all the fabrics without human touch. Like Eileen Fisher, which is a brand that's been in sustainability for a very long time, they collect all their clothes, whatever people send back, and they still hand sort it. But for my brand, we launched with ICO, I:CO, and they're a global recycler that's been around mainly in Europe, but they're global, and they kind of help us with our recycling. So if I am on my brand, people can contact us and send back any of their recycling they want to do, and we pass it on to them. But what happens there really is part of it gets sent to Africa or third world countries, and that's a whole nother subject. Let me get back to that. Some of it gets properly recycled because there's labels, you know what it is, but most of it actually is just stuck in a storage in a pile. So it's not really something that's fully flushed out. And I spoke to someone who is in the vintage fashion world. A lot of it that people donate to Salvation Army and all those are the worst quality of products. And you know, it's actually when someone dies and passes away, then there's the most amount of used and old clothes, and the vintage people will go and try to pick it up, but a lot of it just goes straight to landfill, and that is a big problem. So I also know this organization called the OR Foundation. They're based in UK. They're based in New York and Ghana, and I'll send you guys the Instagram page, because it's very heartbreaking to see. There's a landfill there for only garments. It's not just a landfill. It's not a hill. It's a mountain. It's a few mountains of clothes. And it's mainly brands like H&M, Marks & Spencer, and those type of things. And people have no way to deal with it. There's a very robust secondhand used clothing market there. But you know, the amount of things that go there that are bad quality is so much. And I think that's really scary. And definitely recycling is something that we need to continue to work towards. So far, most of the brands that do like recycled materials, like my brand, we use recycled materials. A lot of it is from pre-consumer waste, where it's from the factory floors, where it's, you know, cutting floor waste and all that, which you know exactly what you're getting. Therefore, it's easier to recycle. I've also invested in the world's first circular sneaker called Thousand Fell, and they figured out how to make a shoe, which is first of all sustainable materials, but then in the end of the life, you can send it back to them. And they're working with UPS so they can collect everything. And then they work with TerraCycle to help recycle the shoe in the end. And parts of the shoe are biodegradable, and the other parts are recyclable. But I think recycling is a massive topic that really needs government help. I'm currently in Hong Kong. There's no recycling, not even for plastic bottles. And people do it in their homes and people think they're doing good, but there's actually no recycling, which is very, very sad. And so that requires government funding and government support to even make it happen. But I also think in fashion, the technologies, whether it's robotics, whether it's chemical recycling and all that, would help this. And for the designing side, it's also important. And I'm not even quite there yet, but we're working towards it. Our puffer jacket, for example, is made from 330 recycled plastic bottles, but our buttons are metal. So I told my team, I didn't know about this until we made the product. I'm like, next time we make this, we're going to make the buttons also recycled PET, so that the whole thing is union material. If we want to recycle in the future, they just literally throw it in the machine versus having manual labor cut it out. But yeah, I think recycling would be a big industry on its own in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple more questions. So Jason, you're next. Do you wanna go ahead?
Sure. Thanks, Daniel. Hi, everybody. I'm Jason. I work out of StitchFix, but I'm curious to learn more about sustainability, so I'm excited to be on the call. My question was related around, like, with the acceleration of COVID, how are you seeing companies adapt their technology and processes to improve their sustainability initiatives and better predict demand? For us, we've definitely seen an uptick as consumers shift to direct to consumer, and brick and mortar starts to level off a little bit or decline significantly with COVID. So we're able to work with our sustainability vendors to give more better data on our customer profiles as we're collecting more data with that uptick. So I'm curious as to how you're seeing that affect better products coming out of sustainability vendors. And then on the flip side, I think one of the challenges we have is how can we better educate the average consumer, because that's also been a struggle for us, and I think a lot of fashion brands across the board. And then along with that, I think just along my curiosity, I was curious as to, like, what one mistake did you make early on in your sustainability journey that you think would give valuable insight to people here as we start ours?
Well, I think one of the ways that you can help is, like, people like you and people who work at StitchFix come and teach the industry. You guys are really the real ones out there who are using data properly for the fashion industry. Like the big brands out there in fashion, they don't know how to use data. They have some digital marketing guy, you know, putting Instagram ads, and they call that data. I'm like, no, that is not. And, like, you guys are the only ones who are using data to predict what the customer wants, and even designing things based out of that. And I talk about it, and I try to get my team to look into it. We did some, you know, A/B testing for products before we even create it. I'm tiny. My new brand is just tiny. We just started, but, you know, the rest of fashion, they've never heard of what you guys are doing. They still don't. Even with StitchFix as an IPO'd company, they don't understand it. There is another sad fact is that almost, I want to say this is Amazon, but I think even with most of the big brands, like 40% gets returned, and the return rates for e-commerce is extremely high. What happens is, let's say the brand puts a product out September 1st, fall collection, September 1st. It takes 3 weeks for a customer to buy it, 1 week to ship to them. Customer keeps it for 21 days before they return, another week to return. Then it gets back to the fulfillment center. But fulfillment centers traditionally don't know how to do reverse logistics. They don't know how to check the product and all those. It takes them some brands I've heard 30 days before it goes back into inventory. By that time, that product is not only discounted, it's already off the website. So when you return something, especially if you buy from fast fashion brands, that is a $15 product, they're not going to do returns for you. It goes straight to landfill. It gets burned. It doesn't even go to the outlet stores. It becomes trash every time we return. And, you know, if you buy on Amazon, that's definitely the case. And so that's very scary fact to hear about. I'm sure StitchFix does way better than the industry. And I currently am an advisor to a company that does a virtual fitting room. So it's a try it on button where, because women, we're like, oh, I don't know what size am I? Am I 4, 6, or 8, or 10? And then I buy 2 or 3 of the same pair of jeans, try it on at home, and ship back the 2. So the virtual fitting room, which creates your own avatar, you can take a picture of yourself or put your measurements in. Hopefully that would let people know, hey, this is your correct size. You don't need to try on the other sizes. And it's a highly accurate one. It's called Perfectly. These guys spent 6 years of their own time and money developing the tech. And so I'm trying to help them get this technology to some of the bigger brands. Target has implemented it already, which is quite exciting. But it's also a part of, like, we need customers to adopt it also. Yes. Sorry, Jason. What else? I mean, you guys need to come out and teach people. Like, more StitchFix people need to come out and you know, Silicon Valley and New York fashion has to get together. That's really what I think. And that's part of my struggle for starting my brand. I know this information because I invest, because my brothers are in tech. And when I try to put a team together, I either found people who are very tech driven and didn't know so much the fashion business, not just the design side, the business side, or I found designers or people in fashion that knew nothing. Like I couldn't find even a merchandiser that kind of straddled the data world. And I meet a lot of fashion people who worked in department stores or whatever, and they're like, oh, we use a lot of data. We know what to predict for next season. And I start looking into it, and I'm like, okay, we're still a bit off. And I think that's my biggest struggle to this day. East Coast and West Coast is not mixing. Yeah. Was there another question there? I forgot.
Well, yeah, there's a couple others. I think even another one from Jason, but I think to give everyone the chance to ask a question, let's move on. So Jason, thank you very much for your question. Veronica, you had one as well.
Hi, so I'm a student of business management, and I'm my thesis in the field of fashion industry. I was just thinking, because when the pandemic hit and we couldn't go to do some shopping, and I heard that we can say that fast fashion industry will have to slow down, because maybe customers are starting to realize that we do not need that many clothes and we don't have to buy another t-shirt like every month. Do you think that the pandemic will be more like a challenge for sustainability in fashion, or maybe it is a chance to realize that we need just a better quality?
I think the pandemic has helped sustainability in fashion, but especially I have more data in America, so I'm going to speak to that market. What has happened during the pandemic, beginning to mid-March, everyone's very scared, and then by April, people were bored at home and everyone went shopping. So e-commerce increased so much that direct-to-consumer, digitally native brands all did so well. I was trying to find a new fulfillment center. I spoke to all of them. They're like, we have no capacity. We're social distancing in the warehouses, and we're doing 100 to 120% growth. And so that's what happened. But then you read in the newspapers that all these big brands are suffering, and those are the ones with the stores. Wholesale and standalone stores. And I actually think that some of them, because they're not like StitchFix and Jason, because they're dinosaurs to begin with, they have issues anyways, and COVID has kind of accelerated that. So those dinosaurs would eventually die off and have to shrink in size. Maybe not completely die off because they're staple or very big names, but some of them would shrink in size. And I think that's what's happened. But for the consumer and consumer awareness, we've definitely seen a stronger interest in sustainable options. Whether people really know it or not, I think people are learning. You look at Google data, that people are searching what's organic clothing, what does sustainable clothing mean, and people are more willing to spend on sustainable clothing than not, especially the Gen Z. But I think Alexis, you said you're a little bit on the street side, maybe towards a younger consumer. I find that the Gen Z market actually has fewer sustainable options at this very moment, and I know that there's people who are trying to do more, like even just blank t-shirts with a print or something like that. But I think the Gen Zs are making a stand, like if it's not sustainable, I'm not buying it. Versus especially later millennials would be like, oh, I'll choose a sustainable when they talk about it, but when they actually spend, they'll choose like whatever they think is the prettiest. Yeah, someone told me that data recently. Yeah, baby boomers are not quite there yet with sustainability.
Yeah, I still remember when Brexit got through, and the most Googled question in the UK was, what is the European Union? So maybe it needs a tipping point for us to realize and to actually care, as you say, to not just talk about it, but to deeply care. Hassan, you had another question. Are you able to talk and ask yourself? Awesome.
Everyone, sorry, Hassan here, former colleague of Eleanor, now working in strategy consulting. My question comes around the design of the building of the clothes themselves. So more simple designs with more neutral colors are more likely to last for customers. And considering customers will become more conscious about sustainable clothing, will there be a massive change in design in the next 5 to 10 years, potentially further?
I think Okay, so this is how I see fashion, regardless of sustainability. I've always seen there's the fashion world where it's the high end and the, you know, very trend driven kind of things. And then there's so-called apparel, which is kind of where I think the business is bigger because not everyone are influencers. And so on the very high end fashion trend driven thing, I think that it's still going to be around because there is one demand for it is an art form that allows human beings to express ourselves. And so I think there is some admiration to the greatest designers of this planet that have created amazing things. But every day, we wear apparel. So I do see that apparel being affected by sustainable fashion. And I think definitely up to this date, the first wave of sustainable fashion has been more earthy tones or a bit more crunchy, and you know, and people are trying to move away from it to have more stylish things, but basics have been the first entry just because it's an easier product to make, and also has a bigger market. I think in terms of what I care most is, you know, I'm not a fashion designer, so I'm not there to create the most, you know, avant-garde whatever dress or anything. So I really look at it in terms of sustainability, what kind of creation we can have, what kind of innovation we can have. And it's really looking to find better materials because there's a limitation right now. If we use recycled cotton, it's not as good as virgin organic cotton. The quality is not as good. If we use recycled any material, like we tried to do a recycled wool coat and I had to scrap it halfway because it was pilling too much, and I had this grand plan and I was kind of bummed about it. And I think that's where we really need to create so that we can use these organic options, we can use these recycled options. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, we're running out of time. Actually, we have to time's over in 4 minutes. Veronica, do you have? Can we stretch a little bit so that we still get to ask Chivan's question? Is that fine for you?
I'm fine. I hope you guys are not bored of me talking.
Clearly not. There wouldn't be so many questions otherwise, right? So Chivan, then please go ahead. And thanks for taking the time to talk a little longer.
Hey guys, yeah, thanks so much, Veronica. Really, really interesting talk. I was just looking at your website and saw about the eco activation process, and I was just really interested in how and like this technology. Wanted to get your thoughts and elaborate a bit further, and if you've seen other brands like adopting this process.
Yeah. So what we have is chlorocarbon-free activation that is added to the clothes so that it is antimicrobial and also anti-odor. And the idea here is that piece of garment, you don't really have to wash it. And it's also difficult for me. And what I've done is I've wore that same t-shirt to the gym 7 times. And every time after finish, I just hang it up. I'm like, I'm not going to put it in the laundry. And that's what it's supposed to do. We tell you to wash it less because washing is a very detrimental process to the world. We use a lot of water. All the clothes, sports clothes, especially petroleum-based polyester, nylons, synthetics, all have microfiber that comes out. So washing is a big problem, and we want to reduce the amount of washing that we do. And but it's a hard thing, and I've struggled with it. I'm trying to not wash it, but I just went to the gym. And I'm like, okay, next day, okay, it doesn't smell, let me wear it again. And I launched this product, but I realized it's difficult for the customers. But then COVID hit, and this company that does what they do for us now came out with a new thing literally 2 months ago, which kills COVID on the clothing. If the COVID germs get on it within 2 hours, it's dead, and it's much safer. So I think these type of innovations would have more applications and more purpose. But let's go back to the washing part, because if you guys do wash your clothes, especially anyone with sports clothes, we all do, or most clothing on the market are cotton and polyester mix. Wash it in a bag called the Guppy Friend bag, which is available on our website, but available on many other places. And you put all your washing in that bag, and it collects the microfibers, because our current washing machines don't have the filters to filter the microfibers. And every time you wash your clothes, particles go out to the machines, filters, and then goes to the ocean. The fishes open their mouth, and then we eat the fish and we eat the plastic. So that's one thing which is a big issue for us. And then I'm going to do a little commercial here. I've also invested in a laundry detergent called Dirty Labs. It's a biotech and enzyme-based laundry detergent, which is cleaner than any clean detergent on the market. And they clean, I've seen the test, they clean better than Tide. They keep the color better and all that. So they've just launched literally 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. So I think, again, another technological advance, which I think is good for the world. But this is what they told me with the laundry detergent. Companies like the big guys, I'm not gonna say the name, I'm not gonna say the name. The CEO prides themselves on, oh, we made a bigger bottle, and we made the cap bigger, and we made the mouth bigger, so that the consumer pours out more every time. And if we pour out more, then we have to buy more laundry detergent. So that's how those consumer CPG companies make money. When we hear that, I'm like, that's injustice towards us. It's not right. And I really hope that in the future businesses have more of a conscience. I think there is a way to not just squeeze every single penny for the bottom line, but to also do some good for the planet while doing business. Yeah.
Eleanor, you have one last question, and then, yeah, I have 2 last points to finish up.
And then we brought out. Thank you so much so far, Veronica. I was thinking, going back to what Jason was saying about how we can make an impact as consumers, and I was thinking, how afraid are fashion industries of consumers suddenly asking for sustainable options? Like, do they feel a pressure already? So you said there's been a change in the last 2 years already. There's been some efforts made, but like, is there a general feeling of consumers really pushing for it, or is it really not there yet? Yeah, like people are quite sheepish and just thinking, oh, I can't find the right color shorts, I'll just take the non-sustainable option. What is your thoughts on that?
The industry is not, I personally, of course, think it's very good when consumers push the industry to be more sustainable. I think we should do it more. And my challenge to all of you would be like, can you try to not buy clothes for 1 year? And I did that myself. And halfway through, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a tailor and tailor all the stuff that I have, things that I haven't worn, I don't know, since having kids or whatever that was stuck in my closet. And I think that was a great exercise for myself. But that becomes a problem for the industry. If people buy more secondhand, if people buy less, then does the whole industry shrink? And shrinking means failed businesses, shrinking means smaller businesses. So as an industry on a whole, I think that's a bit more scary than the whole sustainability side. I think let's go use organic cotton versus cotton. It's easy to tackle. It's the overall industry that's, I think, a scary thing. Again, it's between money and purpose. And can there be a balance for both? I think not just our industry, every industry is trying to figure it out. Yeah, like, do we want to buy the next iPhone? And is there a way to make it sustainable? Does that even mean enough? You know, we have a lot of people on this planet. I think that's the more bigger philosophical questions that everyone's in the back of our minds. But that's where I also believe material science can come in and solve some of those problems, where we can really, and material science and regenerative agriculture, but we can make things where it's doing good to the planet versus doing just less bad. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, what a fascinating talk, Veronica. Thank you so much. I think we've all been inspired. Like, for the very end, please, anyone who's not fine with them being on the recording, we can edit you out. So please let us know if you object to being recorded. Just reach out to us. You can also do so after the call. Last question to you, Veronica. Is there any way people can engage with you, people can follow you? What's the best channel to follow your project and see what you're up to?
Oh, I think, no, that was what I was going to say. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the call, for an opportunity for me to share some of my thoughts. But I'd like to connect with you guys and hear your stories, because I think everyone here is doing really interesting things. So should I put my email in the chat? and you guys can just email me. Otherwise, I'm on Instagram as well.
You can, Veronica, what you can also do is...
recently, so don't LinkedIn me. I'm a bit overloaded on LinkedIn. So
otherwise, you can send me a message and then we can redirect you. So the people who took us, you must have received an invitation from my email address. So I put it again in the chat. You can send me a message or you can contact Dan too, and then we can put you in touch with Veronica if that's easier for you, Veronica. Or yeah, we can just badger you on Instagram or LinkedIn.
I'd like to connect with you guys. I think everyone's doing really cool things. So
perfect.
Cool.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. And thank you for the openness. I wish you all a fantastic day. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Veronica. It's been really great, and talk soon, hopefully. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Hi, thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It's absolutely lovely. Have a lovely evening, Veronica. I guess it's evening for you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.